afternoon and welcome to Radio Lewisham with your host Sejon Mutakumaru. And I am back once again, once a month, with Box of Niche. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the show, Box of Niche is where we basically unbox, a box of niche. And it could be any kind of niche, from books to films to even something about the local area, which I actually did in one of my other episodes. So, for the box of niche we are unwrapping today is a very interesting one. It is the rise and fall of Virgin Cola. And you're probably thinking to yourself, Virgin Cola? As in the people that are providing my broadband and catch-up and trains? Yes, it is indeed that same person. You see, in the 1990s, or as we like to dub it, the Cool Britannia, when Britain was seen as cool and up and coming with lots of ideas and fun and technology, all that kind of thing coming up, it was Virgin that was coming up and coming in that time as well. It wasn't just trains or broadband back in those days, it was, kind of trains, but also airplanes, record labels, books, mega stores as well, like little shopping malls, that kind of thing. And it was just incredible. Like, in the 90s, you would never fail to see a Virgin logo somewhere out there. In fact, the Virgin record label, which is still going today under Universal, is one of the key labels that have helped artists like Amy Winehouse come and rise to fame. And for me in particular, the Virgin books range is quite an important one, because you see, there was this British science fiction show called Doctor Who, and unfortunately it was cancelled in 1989, which means it had no episodes on television except a TV movie and a special in the 90s. So in order to plug the gap, they decided to make a new book range, one for the current Doctor and one for the people that played the Doctor previous, and this was under the Virgin Books range, which lasted all the way until the 2000s, and it was quite a varied and successful range, to say the least. But yes, coming back to my point, Virgin was just a big empire back in those days, along with everything else. As mentioned, it's part of the Cool Britannia kind of era, I would say. But when it comes to Virgin Media themselves, they decided to expand into the drinks industry, more importantly the soft drinks industry. Now, Virgin Cola was set up in the early 90s in conjunction with Colt, which was an American-Canadian company that specializes in bottling its own labeled drinks, and Colt was a major international brand that could have worldwide appeal. So the head of Virgin, Richard Branson, the CEO, as we now say nowadays, was attempting to widen the Virgin name and rival Coca-Cola and Pepsi brands, which I have to say is a noble goal, because if you think about it today, when you go out and buy a soft drink with your meal deals or today, what fizzy drinks do you really go for? You go for Coca-Cola and Pepsi, Fanta, which is under the Coca-Cola brand, you have Dr. Pepper, but there aren't really that many. It's mainly dominated by these big brands, so I have to say on Richard Branson's part, that's notable. But, as I mentioned in the title, I said fall, which we will come to in a bit towards the end. Now, when it started hitting international shores in its first years, they served them in the UK cleverly on their own flights, Virgin Atlantic flights, and onboard shops on Virgin trains, and also at Virgin cinemas. And Gulliver's Kingdom, which was a chain of parks in the UK, also sold post-mix Virgin Cola, and this led them in 1994 to have a distribution deal with the British supermarket Tesco. It's also again worth noting that Tesco's was a big brand, a supermarket brand in the 90s, up there with Sainsbury's and the like in that time. So this was big business for them. And also, speaking of big business, it was also seen on a promotional blimp in the TV show Baywatch in 1995 on May 20th in the US in an episode called Runways. And that episode featured Richard Branson heavily. So this was just more marketing for him. And from 1996, there were 500ml bottles that were marketed as the Pammy, as the curves were designed to resemble Pamela Anderson at the height of popularity in the UK at the time. Definitely something you would not get away with today. But yes, it went on to be launched in France, Belgium and South Africa. And then in 2002, they even had Virgin Vanilla in the UK, which was by Princess Soft Drinks, a brand that you might be familiar with through their bottled drinks. And this was ahead of a similar product from the rival Coca-Cola, who were also planning to do that as well. And in 2004, they were announcing a rebrand from Princess Soft Drinks to focus on the teenage market. So at the same time, they discontinued the vanilla and caffeine-free varieties. So short-lived, unfortunately. Now, famously, when he was advertising in the US, Branson attended the US launch of Virgin Cola, driving a T5445 tank into New York's Times Square. It subsequently agreed to distributors with US retailers like Target, which again is another big US brand of shops in America. You could never fail to not see a Target anywhere at the time, and Virgin Drinks also dealt with quite well in its US market, and it closed in 2001, having to manage to establish a 0.5 share of the soft drinks market by volume. And also, again, a couple of notable examples in American pop culture. A bottle of Virgin Cola can be seen on a coffee table in Monica and Rachel's apartment in the Friends episode, the one with Joey's bag that first aired in the US in February the 4th, 1999. And Richard Branson previously appeared on that show, having been a big fan. And it appeared in Ally McBeal in the character's refrigerator in the episode Love Unlimited, which first aired on January 18th, 1999. And then in the cult classic Buffy the Vampire Slayer, aired on aired its 10th episode. It aired an episode called Hush, and the character Willow can again be seen drinking a Virgin Cola in a scene with Buffy. And I think it's pretty important to highlight these examples because product placement in TV is big business. You could never fail to see product placement nowadays across TV. For example, Stranger Things has been heavily criticized for its product placement. And also, the James Bond franchise, Die Another Day, for the 40th anniversary was famously called Buy Another Day because of the amount of product placement it has, and yeah, I have to admit it is quite ridiculous. But that all aside, it is important to note that these examples just show how big Virgin Cola were being in the UK and the US. They were becoming big business. They were becoming a serious competitor for Coca-Cola. Now, according to Branson, when it came to its decline, there was a campaign run by the Coca-Cola company against Virgin Cola. Originally, they didn't treat Virgin as a serious competitor. They didn't see them as a serious business whatsoever, which makes a lot of sense because Coca-Cola has been a dominating force throughout almost every decade, every year since its invention. It's baked into American pop culture if you think about it. When you think of Americans, you think of Coca-Cola, which is literally part of billboards, advertising, Times Square. You could never fail to see Coca-Cola anywhere else. And also Santa is red because of Coca-Cola. They wanted to capitalize on Santa and Christmas. So yeah, it's understandable why the Coca-Cola company didn't see them as serious business. No one until now really threatened them. They were the big dominating force in the soft drinks industry. And, well, that all changed as we can see with all these examples. Virgin Cola was making headway to the American market, and it could have potentially put them out of business. But when it started entering the American market, Virgin Cola, at a suggestion of a British Coca-Cola executive, they assembled teams for an influencing campaign. Its intent was to make deals to retailers that sold Coke and Virgin Cola to get Virgin Cola removed from shelves. Yep, that's right, they bought their way out of this trouble. There was even a picture of how they just famously got briefcases of cash onto a plane and just went out there and just said to them, look, we're going to give you some money, but Virgin Cola's got to go. And so it did, and Richard Branson didn't even know that at the time, and he only became aware when the person who made that decision was working for Lloyds TSB and would become the manager of Virgin Bank Group's finances. But yeah, he did admit that he did not know what was going on, and this led to a drop in sales. And he did not become aware, but he did become aware eventually later when Tesco's, as we mentioned, they were a big business for Virgin Cola, discontinued Virgin Cola. And later, the Coke executive, as mentioned, who'd worked for Lloyds TSB, did all the banking accounts for the Virgin Group. And when Branson found out from her at dinner, he said, and I quote, "I wasn't sure whether to strangle or not, but I forgave her for it." So, I guess he got over it quite quickly. Or maybe not. You be the judge. But yes, by 2007, Virgin Cola had reached a limited capacity in the UK, with its distribution license being taken over by Silver Spring in August. And in July 2008, they tried to do a relaunch and secured a product placement with Channel 4 to promote the drink, with Channel 4's music programme T-Mobile Transition. But alas, the planned relaunch never came to fruition after Asda, the last major supplier of the drink, removed it from their shelves in August 2009 due to poor sales. And Silver Spring from themselves would eventually collapse into administration. So it sounds like it's the end for Virgin Cola, right? Well, no, it was still going in Bangladesh all the way up until 2004, and in fact in 2004 the Global Beverage Company Limited, the final international release license for Virgin Cola based in Bangladesh, stopped producing the beverage, leading to its total demise. And Branson claimed to pull the plug after seeing that Bangladesh was the only remaining success. In his retrospective for on Virgin Cola, he said, "We had a great brand, but Coke had a great deal of brand, and the taste of Coca-Cola was maybe marginally better, but it was either nor here nor there. So since then, what I learned is that the only way to go into business where we were palpably better than all the competition." And that's basically how he concluded and looked at Virgin Cola. And yeah, that's basically the end of Virgin Cola. I thought it was an interesting story to bring up, because I feel like one of the questions that I feel like a lot of people have when they look at these soft drink brands and in their meal deals is, well, why hasn't someone made a Coca-Cola ripoff or another Pepsi to rival these fizzy drink brands? And well, there's your answer. But that's not to say there aren't any alternatives still out there. BAR is best known for being the British version, well, not British, but BAR is just best known for selling their own version of Coca-Cola and Cherryade. Not what it once was, but a very nice taste. But I think it's just interesting just hearing that story, because I think that just goes to show what staying power these brands have. The fact that Coca-Cola could have been bankrupted by this up-and-coming Virgin Cola, is insane to think about, but it isn't that crazy to think about, to be honest, because these brands have the staying power that they've had for many years. They've had dominance, they still have dominance, and they've built their reputation and history over the years. But I think it's also interesting to note that even though something like fizzy drinks still have the same brands, there has been a changing shift in other places. For example, television. Over the past few years, especially during the pandemic afterwards, there's been a shift. Not many people watch BBC, not many people watch ITV, not many people watch Channel 4, Channel 5. People are going to flock into streaming services. Apple TV Plus is up and coming and is popular and successful thanks to Slow Horses. That came from Apple. And then you have Disney Plus, which comes from the Disney brand. And then you have Netflix, which is, of course, one of the biggest streaming services. And you probably would forget that before all this, in the 2000s, they were mainly just a DVD service. They would send DVDs to you and you can rent them and then you send them back, and they discontinued that a while ago. But now they've gone from that to a streaming service, and Blockbuster was practically left in the dirt, unfortunately. But one thing I would say that's interesting, another shift that I don't see talked about, is cars. When you say car, you think of Vauxhall, you think of Ford, you think of Toyota, and you think of, well, Ferrari and Lamborghini and Aston Martin and all those car brands. But I've noticed an interesting shift, especially in the electric car industry. Most notable is BYD, which is a Chinese electric car company. And the reason why I bring them up is I was passing a Vauxhall dealership and I noticed BYD on the side, and I thought that was odd. And I noticed they were selling BYD electric cars on the side of the dealership. And then you notice all the buses in the area. They're all mostly BYD, Chinese electric buses, which is honestly pretty crazy to think about, as most buses were either assembled in Europe or Britain, but now they're fast becoming just electric Chinese buses, the same ones that you would see in China. And then there are just these random brands that are coming up from nowhere. I can't remember the brand exactly. I think it was Jacob or Giacomo. There was this advert on YouTube for an electric car. It was called the Giacomo or the Jacob, and I thought nothing of it. I thought, oh, it's just an independent electric car brand. That's interesting. And then one day I literally just saw it, fresh off the line, baby fresh car sales fresh, so to speak. Sorry, car dealership fresh, so to speak, just out on the street. Not a speck of dirt. It was just there, just parked with any other car. And then I saw it again when I was on my way to the station, to the radio station. I just saw another one just parked up, again, kind of in a similar colour. It was just crazy, just all these brands coming from nowhere. For example, the Maxis fans, they used to be put under the LDV brand, and now they're just their own thing. It's crazy to think just that all these brands are just coming out of nowhere and just fast growing. But coming back to the point of today's topic, I think it's interesting seeing how much power a company can have over these kind of things. And as mentioned, this is probably the answer to why not many people can rival Coca-Cola or rival Pepsi, so to speak. They have been here for quite a long time, and we've just let them sink into their teeth into everything. So unfortunately, as we can see with Virgin Cola, they just didn't have a chance at all. But yes, as mentioned, there are shifts in other places, and then there are other shifts in places that aren't. It's a very interesting time, I would say, especially what's going on in the world with everything just shifting and changing. It feels like everything is just so fast moving and moving so quickly. 1 minute something's happening, the next minute something else is happening, and it just feels like seconds and minutes are just ticking by. But yes, coming back to concluding this, I think this story is important to show that this is what happens to rivals sometimes, and this is what happens when we give a company too much power over us. This is what happens when a company has too much wealth and power to manipulate stuff to their advantage. I mean, as I said, they literally apparently had a campaign. They had a campaign and literally just went to someone, gave them some money, and said, don't stock Virgin Cola, stock our cola, Coca-Cola, which is honestly crazy to think about. Imagine someone came into your shop and just said, don't stock this chocolate, stock this one. We'll give you some money for it. And I think it also brings up another question. Would you do it? If Coca-Cola came into your shop and said to you, sell our Coca-Cola, but don't sell Virgin Cola. Here is some money. Would you take it? If so, why? And if not, why would you not take it? And I think I'll conclude by saying there is a lot of corruption, greed, and corporations just taking everything for what they got. So, while it may all seem hopeless and while it all may seem like the world is closing around you, please do not give up hope. There will be a way to fight back. There will always be a way to fight back between corporations and us. They cannot hold their grip on us for that long. There'll always be a way to get free from them. But now, coming back to my show, on my previous episode, I spoke about lost media and the importance around lost media and how sometimes things are not lost. And I spoke about a TV show how it was on DVD. I mentioned lost media from the 60s and how they've all mostly been lost. Well, as luck would have it, I can't believe I'm saying this, this month there was literally 2 episodes of Doctor Who found. For those of you who don't know, the 60s of Doctor Who were... beg your pardon. For those who don't know, the 60s episodes of Doctor Who have been lost. Well, not all of them now, but there was a time where almost all of it was lost. But over the years, we've managed to find many of the episodes back. And even the third Doctor's episodes, in the 1970s, the 70s era was almost lost. But we've managed to retrieve black and white and colour copies. But coming back to the 60s, they found 2 episodes, the Daleks Master Plan 1 and 3. Beg your pardon. Daleks Master Plan 1 and 3. And I think what's interesting about this is that basically, when it comes to these episodes and how they're laid out, these would sometimes be 6 parts, 25 minutes each, or 4 parts. In fact, even 7 parts in some places. But at some point they realised, this isn't working out, and they eventually went into the 4-part format, sometimes keeping on to the 6-part or 7-part format. But eventually it just became 4 parts, which were a lot easier to deal with. But this Daleks Master Plan is quite an interesting one, as this was 12 parts long. 12. Or 13 if you count the prequel episode that was aired the month prior. But yes, this was 12 episodes, all 25 minutes long. And for the longest time, only episode 2, episode 5 and episode 10 were the only ones available. But now we have found 1 and 3, which means we have 1, 2, 3, 5 and 10. And what's really incredible about all of this is that the first 75 minutes of Doctor Who is now viewable to us, and we have a company called Film is Fabulous to thank for that. Film is Fabulous is a non-profit company that have basically gone out of their way to deal with the legal problems in getting some of these lost episodes back, because they're in the hands of private collectors and there is a lot of legal strife around this. So if you can, please go to the Film is Fabulous website and donate and give them as much money as you can, because they're a vital service in helping recovering lost media. And All of this would be not possible without them. All of this would not be possible without them. So please go and give them some money, and thank you, Film is Fabulous, for finding these episodes. This is honestly the most incredible this is the most incredible find, and as mentioned, the first 75 minutes of this 12th part is now viewable. In fact, the BBC will be airing them on iPlayer on Easter once they're restored to the highest quality. Now, one thing I wanted to talk about in regards to this, Peter Purves, who played Stephen Taylor in this episode, now he was invited to Phoenix Cinema in Leicester under false pretenses before this was announced to view the 2 episodes. And then he was told, we found these 2 episodes, and there's a wonderful clip of showing him being absolutely shocked but also really happy. And I quote from him, from Peter was, "My flabber has never been so gasted," which is honestly one of the most incredible sentences I never thought I would hear in a million years. It is an honestly incredible quote, and something we can live by. So, to summarise, I will say this. Always never lose hope. Never lose hope in the darkness. As we've seen in this example in our episode today, sometimes corporations have a strong grip on us, but there'll always be hope, and there'll be always a way to fight our way out and release our grip from these corporations. And coming on to the last part, I think it's worth to note that, as I said in my other episode, you just never know when you're going to find lost media. So fight the power of corporation and find lost media. I guess that could be the lesson for today. And to quote from Peter Purves once more, "My flabber has never been so gasted," which I think is honestly an incredible quote to just live by and just live in your mind for as long as you can, because it's just one of the most incredible quotes of all time. But as always, thank you very much for listening. It has been an absolute pleasure coming here once a month to get these episodes out. I've always tried my best to research to the best of my accuracy. I've always tried to do my best to bring you the best entertainment possible. If you can, there will be a podcasted version on my YouTube channel whenever it is available. Please go and look out for the YouTube channel SayFilms99. That is SayFilms99 on YouTube. I'll be posting podcast formats of these with intros and stuff, and I might do some other things on the side. But for now, farewell and have a great day.